Okay. Good morning, all, and we'll call this meeting Tuesday, June 11th, 2024, the Municipal Airport Authority to order. Roll call, please.
Shoshani. Here. Berg.
Here.
Cosgrove. Ekman.
Aye.
All right. Approve the minutes of the regular meeting held May 28th of 24.
Move to approve.
Second. Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. 2, approve the airport vouchers totaling $161,851.38. Is there a motion?
So move. Second.
Discussion. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Shoshani. Yes. Berg.
Yes.
Cosgrove. Ekman.
Aye.
All right. Approve individual vouchers A through G.
Move to approve.
Motion? Second. Motion been made and second. Any discussion? Any discussion?
Oh, I have a quick question. So, the Skyway, this is the Skyway that we, oh, excuse me, no question.
No discussion?
No discussion.
Okay. Motion been made and seconded. Roll call, please.
Shoshani. Yes. Berg.
Yes.
Cosgrove. Ekman.
Aye.
Captain.
All right. Number 4, receive update from TL Stroh regarding the parking structure.
Morning, everyone. This morning we're bringing to you our third bid package, which is kind of wraps up the ramp itself. And that is for $10 million, $761,623. So what that does is it brings us to a roughly just a little over $3 million under budget, and what we have to do is add in the parking lot, which we haven't done yet. So that's would almost be like a bid package 4, I'm guessing. And that right now we're estimating at about $800,000. So it's came in really good, and really excited about moving along. Just to give you an update on what's going on, we're moving trees and Fargo Parks is out there picking up perennials and putting them in spots to get rid of them, to hold them over till we can plant them again. We'll be starting removal of the couple will be starting removal of asphalt next Monday, and then we'll start probably a week or two after that, or a little over a week after that, to start actually doing deep foundations and stuff. So getting all the fencing up. And
Just a quick question. If I remember right, the temporary lot intention was to make that permanent ultimately.
I don't believe that was.
Oh, okay.
It was talked about.
That was talked about.
Okay.
Any questions?
And we need a motion to approve GMP for $10,761,623.
Well, the question, this keeps us on track with our overall budget, correct?
Yeah, we're actually below our overall.
About $3 million below.
So moved.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Yes, second.
Motion been made and seconded. Roll call, please.
Shoshani. Yes. Berg.
Yes.
Cosgrove. Ekman.
Aye.
Captain.
Aye. Number 5, receive update from Mead Hunt regarding passenger terminal expansion and modification project.
Good morning, that would be me.
Okay, you're on.
Okay. All right, so yeah, we're still on for the groundbreaking Monday, July 1st at 10 a.m. Just overview of construction completed to date. The elevator's up and operational. Temporary exterior wall and egress stairs are built. Tug overhead door is installed. Excavation has begun. And demolition of the exterior wall is underway. Rammed aggregate pier foundations are scheduled to start the middle of the month here, and then the concrete foundations will follow that. So a lot happening out there, starting up, and the favorable weather just helps that out. As far as budget is concerned, we've received our third GMP for 90. Make sure I have this right. 95. Third GMP for $50,960,966. This tracks below our budget, so what we have left after this, so we have our elevator GMP done, foundations done, and then this is our addition and interior, all the interiors for the addition completed. And then what we have left after this is the renovation part of the GMP. So we are tracking below budget, and we recommend approval of this GMP.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman, now we're getting in some pretty big numbers, and part of the issue was tying this into our revenue. And so I guess that's just, IDE has been tracking that for us. Just want to make sure that if the revenue does not come in, we're not in a box approving some of these. Maybe just explain that relationship.
Okay, good morning. This is Tana. Right now, we had, I guess, to explain the relationship. Right now, as we provide the cash forecast update to you weekly, we'll be giving you a detailed one at the end of the month for the board meeting, because we wanted to make sure we had the bid package numbers updated and stuff. But the numbers are still tracking how they are. We still have a plan going forward with this third GMP that they're approving today. However, you have to keep in mind that there is a lot of federal competitive grants that we are budgeting in at this point that we do not know the answer to going forward. And at this point, we don't know that yet. However, it is in our budget schedule. We are still tracking it. And right now, as far as this GMP3 is concerned, yes, there is funding to proceed with that. We have talked about if other funding does not come in, other projects will not be funded. But I know that's maybe not a good answer for you today, but we'll have a full cash forecast update for you at the next board meeting and lay it out each project by project for you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, that's fine. I just want to make sure that there's a connection between you and when Mead and Hunter McGough comes with their numbers and their bids. So
yeah,
and
yeah,
everyone's assured us that if the money's not coming, that the construction would pause until the money comes in or until we make a Plan B decision. So I just want to make sure that you guys are communicating as we're approving or spending money going forward. I'd like to kind of give us a little stamp of approval when we're voting on this.
At this point, we can tell you yes. I met with Tom Schauer earlier in May, and we confirmed it. As the projects move along, it will depend on the competitive grant funding, the extra state aid funding that's out there. So it is evaluated day by day, or it is evaluated as bids come in. But I met with Brandon and stuff last week. We talked yesterday, and we are on track with everything there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Questions? If not, we have to approve GMP 3 for $50,960,966. Is there a motion?
I move to approve.
Move to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, while Brandon is here, do we have any other questions regarding finishes or updated baggage claim information or anything else that you want to fill us in on, Brandon?
I can, as far as construction start, the project has gone to the city for approval, and the city fees are like $500,000 for the permit, so the city is gaining some revenue there. So that's a good thing. And then as far as the baggage handling, did you receive the visuals or some of the perspective visuals? I sent those out.
I saw a black and white drawing that looked pretty similar to what we currently have.
Yeah, there's not a lot. I mean, really, it's finishes. There isn't, layout wise, there isn't going to be anything much different there, except for like paint and refreshing the floors over there. The murals, we weren't planning on moving or replacing those. And then the ceilings are getting replaced as well.
And then I know there was a board directive to work with, that you were going to work with staff to put together a RFP for art. And do you have any, and then advertising, do you have any updates on that?
Yeah, sorry. So I am working on that proposal. I still have to coordinate, so working through the scope that we're going to be doing, and then coordinating with the art company and Clear Channel. So once I get my scope done, then I need to meet with that group and get their numbers as well. So I'm anticipating having that. I think the next board meeting is June 22nd. I was planning on having something at that time.
So it'll be an RFP?
Nope. It'll be our proposal for the work. It'll be a scope proposal.
Okay.
Any further discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Rashawn.
Yes.
Bird.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Item 6, receive proposal from Eden Hut regarding change order for additional paving to accommodate ground service equipment parking space, Northern Improvement, for $82,619.50. Mr. Mead and Hunt.
So what this is it's tell you about a 500 square yard piece of pavement in this little grass area on the west side of the terminal. It's just bituminous pavement is really all it is. So what it's for is for all the ground handling companies to store all their ground support equipment. So prior to this expansion, they would use kind of the outer limits of the apron, to store all their chemical totes, their conveyors, just their tugs, all that kind of thing. Now that, we've kind of condensed all the gates a little bit to accommodate the expansion, plus we added the expansion project site, they're losing all that space. So this is just change order proposal to the South Perimeter Road for Northern to add that 500 square yard piece of pavement for the airlines to utilize for their GSC equipment. So.
Mr. Chairman. Brendan, if we don't approve it, what's the alternative?
I don't think there is one, to be honest with you. I mean, they'd be parking in any grass space that they could find. So, there's just no way, areas out of the way from all the airlines and everything to safely store all this equipment.
I mean, they could park on the edges of the ramp, I think, come wintertime, summer, we have no place to push snow on.
Right.
No, change orders always bother me. That this was an existing condition as this was all designed, correct?
We never designed it to begin with. It was just, it's actually just add-on work, basically outside of the original work scope to the South Perimeter Road. So it was never bid and designed. So
But it was obviously necessary.
Necessary.
There's no
correct.
alternatives.
Right, correct.
Was it temporary or permanent?
I don't think there's any reason to take it out once you build it, so. I would say permanent, yes.
We can't have them parking in the grass and driving FOD all over the ramp.
Oh, 100%.
Okay, so there's a,
I'll move to approve it, but again, if this is a change order and someone should have thought about it, I mean, in the whole scope of things, I think that whole area is kind of messed up. We've had a lot of discussions about it, and extra space there and potential parking and, you know, we didn't do any change at all on that. And, you know, this should have been part of that discussion here a month ago when we're talking about the rental space and adding to the rental space or what we do, but
Sure.
and
I mean, it just $82,000 just kind of dropped out of the sky that we don't have a choice on.
but I would move we approve.
okay, motion's been made. Is there a second? Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion. Any discussion?
You can take it out if you want to in the future. There's nothing saying you can't do that, so.
Why would you take it out?
If you wanted to reconfigure that area on the west side to, you know, some other use. So.
But this is on the air side of the fence, not.
I understand, but that fence can move, right? Yeah. So, hey, we don't need to get into the details.
Sure.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Hearing no further discussion, roll call, please.
Shauna, yes. Bird.
Aye.
Osmer.
No.
Aye.
Captain.
Aye. Item 7, discuss the 25 mill levy request.
So the MOU indicates we have to give the city an indication of the mill levy request for 2025 by July 1st. Had conversations with Susan Thompson. She came out and visited with me a little over a week ago. And they're aware of, I believe, what the board would approve is to continue with 2 mills. Natalie is on from Ide Bailey, who did an analysis if the 2 mills were not provided to the airport authority, what that impact would be. I don't know, Natalie or Tana, if you've got any insight on that, but I would assume that the board would want to continue with 2 mills.
Yeah, the mill, excuse me. So the mill levy over the past, well, since 2020 has provided you with over $6.5 million of property tax revenue. So clearly it's a large number. So what we did is we took the forecast through 2027 and we looked at what the impact on the capital projects would be. So right now we're estimating that you probably already need to borrow about $60 million in total between the parking garage and the terminal expansion. So if you lose the tax mill levy, you would increase the borrowing on those projects by $4.5 million. So under current borrowing conditions, we estimate that that would be approximately an additional $2.8 million in interest expense over the life of the loan. And then if you, let's say you never got it back, that'd be over $20 million during the next 10 years is what we estimate. So, I mean, they're pretty significant dollars in terms of what that provides for your capital funding projects.
And then we also did a second analysis. The amounts that Natalie just stated do not change, but she stated that we would need to borrow 60 million. But then we assumed, what if some of those competitive grants didn't come in? We would be looking at borrowing 78 million and 80 million. And so it just makes the case stronger that we cannot let that mill levy go.
And of the 60 million, 40 million of that is secured through the Bank of North Dakota loan, of which we have to make our first drawdown this week.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for us to talk about this without having it in front of us. I mean, there's 90 million at least that's unaccounted for. So, I mean, there's a lot of money out there. So, again, the support from the city, the mill levy is critical to the airport and our growth. We've got a huge investment going in. So, I think Yeah, it's important to know that, but that's one variable that if we lost that, it would certainly put finishing the project in jeopardy as we're planning it out. I guess,
And
is
we'll even
that the purpose of this on the agenda? Just to kind of,
We have to give an indication to the city on or before July 1st. That's in the MOU. I've been waiting for Mr. Redlinger to put us on the commission agenda since April. There's a couple of different deadlines in the MOU.
well,
That's what we've
last year we had a real kerfuffle with this whole thing. So if there's anything, so I guess the point is, are we recommending continuing the 2 mills or recommending a change to that?
That's my recommendation is 2 mills minimum. Yes.
So is the issue, is there anyone on our, in your board to approve that, say we're requesting that?
Right. And we'll officially certify the mill levy. Traditionally, we do that in July where we do the dollar amount and send the official certification to the finance director. Susan Thompson will get that. That's done in July as part of the budget process.
Mr. Chairman, there is prescribed procedure under the MOU of what we're supposed to present to them.
Correct.
It would help if we could see that before we make this decision.
Yeah, I guess I can get a copy of the MOU to you, but we're following that, like I
Well,
say.
no, the calculation that they ask for, that, they're looking for cash flow out, right, as we've done here.
Yeah,
I agree. I mean, we don't have it here.
yeah. And that's in production right now with Monica Woodson Horton, along with the assistance of Ike Bailey. They're putting together the same model that they put
So
together last
what's
year.
the date that the city approves the specials? When do you need this? Your final is like October, right?
That's the final, and
Right.
I want to say July is our general certification or approval.
Okay.
But it can modify into September or so. But my suggestion would be that we have our internal group meet and discuss this before we drop the hammer. I don't want any surprises, and I'm getting a sense that there's and yet we've had discussions leading up to now. We all know where we're at with the project's evolution, but it's that how far is long term, and I know there's a desire at the city to wean off the mill levy if you get cash flow enough from your revenues. But I'd like to have us talk this through so there just aren't any surprises. The mayor has indicated to me that we need to have, I think, as I interpret it, we need to have this discussion. I'm not sure anything would change, but I'd rather have us hammer it out proactively. Our internal leadership group with the city and Mike and the finance and Susan and I and whomever, but just to make sure we're not having surprises on either side. I'll be frank, their budget's really tough, and the reality of our situation and your situation and the partnership of the project is critical. But I don't want to assume anything, but I think we should sit down and just make sure that we've had that discussion.
The discussion
Is there any indication of what one mill is gonna produce on the city this year?
I believe a mill is just over 800,000 at the
Last year
current
was about-
level, and so 807,000 or something like that right now.
You're about $100,000 more than last year.
I agree, Mr. Chairman. I think what we should do, last time we had a meeting and city commissioners came if they wanted to, I think the mayor was there. We talked through the project, we showed them the need for the mill, and it was really a 5-0 vote from the city then. Both situations. So I don't expect the city to ever say, no, we're gonna pull funding from the airport. It is the lifeblood to the city of Fargo and the surrounding area. So I think we've always had this tension between the city and the airport authority. I think the way to overcome that is for us to sit with the city maybe a week or two or before, so we're not pushed up against the deadline and we got to make a decision and everyone's frustrated with. But I would take John's lead and say, how do you want us to do that? And if we put it together and meet with them, over lunch like we did last time, I think that's.
Or even Mr. Berg and your executive committee and our executive committee, and then we go to the brown bag or to the level of group sharing. For example, I know the mayor made a mention of the $40 million is coming early, and you'll be in something like sitting on $90 million in reserves, and meanwhile the city's reserves are going south. You know, so this is,
Well,
I don't know, but
we can help you with that too.
but these are discussions, I think we should just make sure there aren't any assumptions there, that we're all clear. My sense is the city's commitment is here with you, but let's just not at the very last minute have surprises and I'll leave it at that. But that would be my recommendation, sooner than not.
I agree. This is by July 1st, so I mean, I can put it back to Mike Redlinger and Susan Thompson to say, find a date between now and then.
And I'll help with that, Sean.
One city commission meeting left before July, but I mean, it's a target date. If it goes into the first meeting in July, I mean, that would be fine too. Just as long as they know our intentions are to request 2 mills. That's what the goal of this discussion is right now.
Well, again, I want to see the information before we commit to that. If we're going to ask for 2 mills, it better be justified by the data that we're putting out in front of them, and we don't have that right now.
Mr. Chairman, Sean, at the last meeting, you talked about the economic impact survey. And if we had those figures, that may help the conversation.
Yeah, that isn't going to happen until the Aeronautics Commission is waiting for their federal grant to do that economic impact study for the state. So if that starts in July, August, as they expect, we may have information for Fargo in December.
Let's get back on topic here. So I would say, I mean, if you're looking for a motion, I mean, I would support us requesting 2 mills, subject to getting all this information, reviewing that. And then, but I don't know if we need that motion now, or I need to know what our process is.
Yeah, I need to advise Susan Thompson and Mike Redlinger that it's our intention to request 2 mills for 2025.
Okay, so I move that we request 2 mills for 2025.
We can do the formal certification.
Let's just do that motion.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Okay. Motion been made to request 2 mills. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded.
So I would say, is there any discussion? So the intention of that would be that it's subject to getting this information, this package, and looking at it.
The only thing that makes me uncomfortable with that is we do have a prescribed method of what they want to see as we lay it out. I haven't seen any of that.
Because it's under development. That's why
I realize it's under development, being asked to make a commitment without information, and I don't like doing that.
Well, and I would say it's subject to us getting that information. That was my motion.
If you want to amend your motion.
Well, that was the motion.
It's subject to support by the information that we have.
What did you write,
You move to request 2 mills from the city of Fargo for 2025, subject to support information being supplied.
Okay, motion.
I don't want to put you in the position that we've already asked for 2 mills. Why are
Well,
we?
I mean, from my perspective, we're not going to go to 1 mill, 0 mills. Potentially, we could go to 3 or 4. The state allows us to go up to 4 mills, but I think we're not asking for that. So,
No, I'm just saying.
But we should follow the process. And again, my frustration is last year this was a tense deal, and I don't know why it was. And our number one partner is the city commission, and so we need to make sure that we're providing them what they want, what they need to be comfortable.
And the information they're looking for is something you touched on is cash balances. What's the cash flow look like? And that, right now we are in a very strong cash position. And so it's just information. That I can say, we would consider the two mills if we do this, if we do the cash flow. And obviously the indication is that we have deficit. But if we were coming out the other end with a large cash surplus, we wouldn't be asking for the 2 mills. If we weren't, if there weren't 2 construction projects going right now, that'd be more difficult.
Well, it's hard to project what our needs are.
Yeah, when we don't. Yeah, we don't have the data in front of us.
Okay, there's been motion made and seconded. Now I'll just add that we're spending money like a bloody bandit here. So to go anything
How
below
does a
2
bloody
mils.
bandit spend money?
A lot.
I would think they would steal more than they spend.
Okay. Oh, excuse me.
One quick cautionary note, and John, I don't mean this antagonistically at all. I often hear the amount of the reserve thrown out like it's the slush fund. What we heard at Sioux Falls was they wish they had more. So that reserve, because of our reliance on federal grants that are unsure, my concern is that we don't have a big enough reserve. I just want to make sure we don't keep throwing that out as a bank account that we can tap anytime we want. We don't know if it's going to be adequate.
And it's committed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's kind of what the information that the MOU requires is to do that budgeting and say, here's where it is. Like I said, I'd just like to see the information before we make a recommendation and say we're going to ask for 2 bills.
Okay,
should have the
motion been made and seconded. Roll call, please.
Shawnee.
Yes.
Bird.
Aye. No.
Aye.
Aye. Number 8, receive update from Flint Group.
You have slides here.
Good morning, everybody. We're going to circle back to our logo discussion, which we've had a few times now. And we're just looking for some kind of conclusion on direction. We did some, I think, do you have the slides there?
Which one was it? There was the sign or the mark?
Not the sign.
This one here,
I think so.
marketing update. No.
I see the second
Okay.
slide. So going back
Okay,
to,
Sorry, I have to share the screen.
going back to our plan for 2024, part of the plan was a brand refresh. And we've been exploring some different logo options, and Jason talked last time about the challenges with the current logo, and I think Jason's on so he can speak to that a little bit again, but there's some challenges with how the current logo displays digitally, which it needs to be refreshed and updated. So at a minimum, that would be probably the simplest thing to do, but because of the expansion and all the other things going on, it's a great time to look at doing something different if you guys want to go that route. So can you go to the next slide? This was part of the brand refresh, was incorporating some new colors, and these are some of the things that are currently running. And Jason, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think this kind of tells a little bit of the story here. I think the new campaign is running. It's in market. I've heard anecdotal things that the campaign itself, that you guys approved in the one meeting here a few months ago, is running in digital and in some of our paid media things. But I think the biggest thing here is that you can see is, the easy way to lazy days. I mean, the headlines, everything really emotes and does a really good job. But I think the problem we run into with the logo, and like Jody alluded to, is we might want to start looking at some updates to that, because when the logo was designed 30 years ago, it worked great in all its spaces. But now, as we're living in much more of a digital world, you can see how it reproduces not so great at a very small reproduction. So if you look at even the top right one, the easy way to bad tan lines, right? I mean, just talking about getting away, and you see Hector, but you cannot read the international airport below it. That line, like the contrail and the jet, how it has a stroke on it, it gets pixelated. So it's just small things like that we would recommend making updates to at a minimum. But that's what brought forward some discussions about exploring new logo options and the brand as we're moving forward. So again, we don't have, I don't want to consider ourselves biased, like we think you guys need a new logo and we're going to, we're just going to keep pushing for this new logo. But there are some legitimate concerns with reproduction of the logo. Things have to change over time. We're in a very digital space. when we're doing advertising communications nowadays. So that being said, moving forward, we'd like just your guys' opinion on it, because we did design some options. Jody mentioned too, with the new updates at the airport, it's not like cost wise we have to go like tomorrow start using a new logo and it's going to cost $1 million to update everything. That's not our intent here when we move forward with this. But if you were to adopt a new logo, you can easily start sunsetting the old and bringing the new in. It's a logo transition, it's a brand transition moving forward that we could do that, for cost from our perspective wouldn't be a lot, but it's from, I see like putting signs up, but you guys are putting new signs in right now. You're putting new updates, you're building new walls, new infrastructure. So if there's a time to do it from a most cost-effective perspective, there's probably not a better time than right now to look at that moving forward. So with that being said, I'll kind of be quiet and let you guys, look at what Kelsey and Jody have here, the rest of this deck, as far as what has been proposed, and kind of what thoughts are on a new logo, and let you guys discuss.
So like Jason said, with the terminal expansion, it's a great time to start phasing in something new if that's the direction you want to go. The technological barriers are probably the biggest issue that we have with the current logo. So at a minimum, just getting that updated would be extremely helpful. And then we can slowly roll out a new logo. However, things need to be replaced and changed. And then just the direction for future design elements. So that all ties into what that brand refresh could look like. So you saw those different colors in the ad in the slide before. You can go ahead, Darren. So we did reach out again to the board and to community partners and updated that survey a little bit that we had done earlier, just to kind of get a pulse on where everybody was at. Really interesting responses. So 7 were yes, and I think they were all from the advisor group, from the community advisory group. 4 no's and no opinion from 1. Go ahead. And then we had the logos ranked. So you can see the logos on the bottom. Now, these aren't the designs that we'd have to go with. This is just to get a general feel of where people's heads are at. Overwhelmingly, the first one got the most positive responses. And those first 2 both work in the FAR, which I think is a nice tie to the call letters that if you fly a lot, you're really familiar with it, but if you don't fly a lot, you might not be as familiar. So it's a good way to kind of bring that element forward. And then you can see how the other 2 played out. Now, this isn't at all to say this is what it has to be, that these are the only 3, but I think the first thing we need to know is, do you want us to explore this? We can do that safe, just evolution of that digital update. Or do you want to look at something new overall? And I would say the advisory committee is all in favor of something new. I think there's some hesitation outside of that committee. But that's a small sampling regardless. So it's a decision that you guys are going to have to make on the direction that you want to go. Is there another slide there?
I've had a lot of people, since this has been out obviously in the public, I've had a lot of emails and a lot of people talking to me. In fact, yesterday at the Grand Farm dedication, that they're insisting that we don't mess with the logo. Is there any other discussion, Rick?
So here's kind of a big picture for me, and you can probably provide some input. At the end of the day, we're all done with this public project. If it looks disjointed and goofy, shame on us. My goal is when someone pulls off 19th or pulls into the airport, they're like impressed. And they're impressed until they step off the jetway onto the plane. And so there's 3 main functions that we've been talking about. Last week we talked about trying to coordinate the advertising, the art, and the sponsorships kind of within the terminal but also this signage throughout here. It should all tie together. And so kind of my frustration is we're looking at these in different chunks. At the end of the day, each one may look good individually, but when you tie them all together, it's like goofy. And I would say that I kind of felt that way in Sioux Falls. It was had some really nice stuff, but it was a little bit disjointed. And so last meeting, we made a motion to have Brandon kind of coordinate those three pieces. And I think from my perspective, I mean, our goal for Flint, our number one goal is to increase the number of employments. You know, we want more people flying. And part of that is like, we can track that now. So we haven't gotten very good at that, but we're tracking that. You know, what's our leakage and how do we improve that leakage? And so I think, you know, what I'm kind of, I mean, you guys are good at this. Our board isn't. So I'm certainly not qualified to be judgmental on things. I like the FAR. It's simple, it's clean, that's what people know. But what I'm trying to do is how do we, I mean, from a advertising for us, kind of on a strategic level, I would like you to kind of be somewhat of the lead on that. So you're directing when we're talking about how do we fit up the interior, you know, do you do signage along 19th Avenue? Do we change that? How do we create that wow factor? So in my mind, I'm trying to figure out, if you will, the accountability chart and how we do this so we're not just arguing about little bits and pieces. Any suggestions?
Well, I think the biggest part is, and Jason, I think could speak to this as well, is the logo is a part of your brand that's going to start to be weaved into everything.
Sure.
And so that decision has to be made as those other things roll out, because that'll start to be incorporated into all of the different work that's done. But ideally, if you have a brand guide, then anybody could take that and then it could start to, you know.
Well, that's
Right,
probably,
I mean,
that's probably what we need is we need a clear branding effort that says, here's how we're branding the airport. And that ties into the whole experience.
yeah, you're probably right. I could speak to that just for a minute, Rick. I think, you know, we just went through this process. If you guys are familiar with Ann Carlson Center, I'll use it as an example. We just went through this process with them where they're updating. They just launched a new campus with a grand opening this last week in Jamestown. And, you know, as a big part of that, they updated their logo because theirs was old. It was hard to read. They were running into a lot of similar issues that we run into. And they looked at it good and hard and they realized that they need to move into a new evolution of their brand. And it wasn't throwing everything out. You guys have done a lot of great work up to this point, building the airport up to what it is. But moving forward, they engaged us. So we updated their logo, their fonts, their brand colors. We updated, we did, you know, wraps for the interior walls of their buildings, exterior signage, flags to make this a true flagship and a beacon, you know, for this area. So it was a concerted branding effort, not from just, here's an ad that we run on Facebook and here's a digital billboard, right? That's what Flint's been engaged to this point, is more of the mass media marketing campaigns. But with them, we did a full integrated, like I would say almost touches of interior design, where we did wraps of these treated photos that, you know, brought the space to life and exuded their brand throughout. And that's something that, you know, you can look at, but we've never really broached that topic with you guys. We've very much been, let's put butts in seats on planes, right? I mean, that's been our main goal when it comes down to it. So if that's something you want us to look at further, we certainly can, but I don't want to, you know, feel like we're forcing, you know, beyond where maybe our parameters have been as an agency and a marketing firm for the airport for as many years as we have. So
I just say, if we're spending $200 million and we don't do that, shame on us.
Now's the time.
So you guys have been our people for 30 years. We've got, you know, I don't know when the right timing is, but I think as this gets done, that's when we really need to roll this out. So I don't think it's a urgent thing that needs to be decided today. And I just think for me, it's much bigger than just a logo. And that's why I'm frustrated. So I think, I don't know, has Mead and Hunt reached out to you? you know?
We've not engaged at that level, you know.
So I'm surprised that Brandon didn't reach out to you after our meeting 2 weeks ago, but I really think that we need to sort through this. We need to figure out what our branding is going to be. And then every decision we make on the experience someone has, what they see, what they touch, where they drive, should tie into that somehow.
You're absolutely right. It's every single touch point is a brand. It's not just a logo. So you're speaking branding 101, Rick, for sure. That's extremely important. It's down to every person that's sitting around that table there is a brand experience, you know, so.
My question would be, how would we move forward with that? Or do you want to think about
we
it?
can connect with Brandon and come up with a recommendation on how to approach that and make sure that all the things are encompassing.
But is your question with this review, do we want to go ahead with the logo change? Is that kind of?
I mean, that's certainly been a question mark for us, is if you're open to it or not. And
the action we took was to direct to look at some logos the committees were, put together. And I think what they're looking for at this point is an indication that we want to pursue that into the larger branding across the whole project.
I feel like these are all important. I don't know enough about branding, what comes first, the logo or focus. I mean, I do think we want to change it, but if we do our branding and decide our branding is a star and a moon, then I don't think we want to decide the logo today. We want to know that our branding is whatever it is. But
yeah, I think the logo, the logo discussion, I think the logos that we've brought forward that were voted on, I think they're all very solid picks that we can work the brand around. We put thought into how those can be brought to life in other mediums. And we know that they play well in digital. Now rounding that out, Rick, I think would be a next phase. And for the rest of the board, I think we could put a brand guide around this so everybody knows the rules, kind of the playbook, right? But then we could expand it from there. I think you could say, yes, we want to do a no logo, or we don't want to do a no logo right now. And it's still, there's another part of this, to your point, that could bring the experience better.
Maybe that's the question. What do you want from us? Do you want us to decide on a logo, or say we're open to looking at new logos, or what's the decision you would need from us now to move forward in what we're talking?
So I think in my mind, and Jason, you can agree or disagree, but one of the challenges that we have is if we're going to stick with the existing logo, we have lots of problems from a digital standpoint. So first we need to know that at a minimum, we're open to updating that. But if we are going with a different direction with the logo, which the time is right for that, like that, if there's never going to be a better time to do that than right now, then that would be incorporated into this additional brand work. But it will make our job a lot easier if you decide you're going to, no, we don't want you to change the logo. You're going to have to work with what you have.
Sure.
Or we're open to.
So that's what you'd like, is are we willing to change the logo or not at this point? You're not requiring a final decision on the specific logo.
No.
Right.
Wouldn't you agree, Jason?
I would agree. I mean, for the rest of the board, I mean, I would love it if you said, yes, we're going to do a logo and this is the one, but at minimum, we just want to know, are we putting that conversation to bed? Like we're not changing the logo, but we need to maybe agree that we need to update it. So I'd say a yes or no, we're doing a logo or not. If you guys want to take it further, we've proposed what we consider our best options. And you guys could take it as far as, yes, we all like that logo and let's move forward with a new logo. So I'll leave that up to you.
Discussion, Rick?
Well, I mean, to move this forward, I would move that we're open to a new logo.
Second?
I'd second on the basis of we don't really have a choice in a digital world. That's not going to get less, that's going to get more. We've got to make a change that works in a digital world.
Yeah.
Well, having heard you say about the digital stuff, yeah, But of the three that you showed, the one on the far left, the call sign, FAR, is by far the best. The other two didn't even make sense.
And if you'll take a friendly amendment, I'd move that we move forward with the logo and based on the left logo. I haven't heard anybody argue for the other ones, that FAR provides information, it respects the Hector name, and it solves the digital problem.
Yeah, my only thought, I guess, would be, I want you to figure out the whole branding thing and not be locked into this logo with an airplane going through like the FedEx.
Yeah.
That may or may not be the right thing when you get the branding done. I support, the FAR, but I think that we need a final decision at some point on the logo. So I don't look at this. I mean,
You're
if you're
incorporating the concept.
Is your motion? Is your motion
The concept of
The
FAR.
concept of the FAR.
not that that's our final one?
No, no.
Well,
Just so they have some direction
Yeah.
on the,
no, I did. Yeah,
everything else you're talking about, that there's some sort of, here are the
narrow it down.
parameters.
That would be very helpful.
I'm fine with that, Joan.
Tell me what your motion is.
My motion is that we change the logo and use the parameters of the left sample
As the concept.
as a concept.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by, no, I'm gonna call for a roll call on that. Roll call.
Yes.
Oscar?
Aye.
Aye.
Tappan.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, one more, just as discussion. I think if you look at the history of Hector Airport, we started, in the early 30s, Hector Airfield, then it was Hector Airport, then it was Hector International Airport. There's been an evolution with every, say, terminal structural big change. So I think to have a brand refresh when we're doing a big expansion just kind of tells people that there's something new and exciting going on here. And that was what we had discussed in December. So I just wanted to say I appreciate the thought and just the opportunity to
But Hector has to stay in there.
Yeah, we'll keep Hector.
Yep, Hector will stay for sure. And just so next steps for us too, I think we'll take this and explore that first logo option more and try to bring this to life with some context. Rick, you mentioned just doing the logo and it's like, well, it's done in a silo, right? Almost like, how does it impact other things? So if we can bring it to life through context and show you guys how it works in spaces, how it works in the current advertising, that will help you guys visualize it, I think, and say, yes, that works, or that doesn't work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay. Discuss airport minimum standards. Mr. Berg, explain, please.
Well, I didn't know what it was a couple weeks ago either, but we met with Kim Kenville, who truly is an expert on airport management, airport governance. And one of the things that she brought up was she was surprised that we didn't have airport minimum standards. And really what that is, and it's not mandatory, it's just, so I guess I'd like staff's input, but basically, reading from this, it's just FAA recommends having a minimum standards. And so that, primarily those people that are using the airport have uniform standards and that no one's being discriminated against. And so I was kind of like, I read through that and I'm not sure what we're doing. I think if a new business wants to come to the airport, they probably call Sean, and Sean comes to this board and they make a decision. And I think what this is saying is for people that have avionics shop or people want some things to have some uniform standard for the airport, and so they can do their planning and all that stuff and know that if they come to the board or we want them to do that, then we're checking to make sure that it's uniform. And I think the risk, my concern is the risk that the FAA says is that there's a risk of unjust economic discrimination for a public airport if we're not doing something like that. So, I don't know. So Moorhead has them, and almost every other airport has them. So I'm just curious what
We
the
used to
background
have them
is.
back in the '70s, and I think, and I'm gonna let Sean talk to it.
Sure.
Yeah, you probably wrote them. So there was some very strict minimum standards the board approved back in the '70s. And in the late '70s, I think it was around '78, '79, there was a challenge from aeronautical service providers on the field. I went to the Civil Aeronautics Board, didn't go in the airport's favor. The challenger won that. I think it had to do with specifications in the standards. It's about the square footage. The board was dictating your office has to be 3,000 square feet and your hangar has to be 15,000 square feet. Economically, the person couldn't afford that. So the board then went away from the standards and decided to govern all of the standards through lease agreements. So everybody on the airfield that is a private hangar owner, like your hangar 19, all of those leases are the same, with the exception of who the lease is with, the term may be different, or the square footage. All of the standards then that meet our grant assurances are spelled out in the grant. The same with our aeronautical service providers like Fargo Jet Center and Fargo Aircraft Maintenance. Everything is the same in the lease. What they pay us per square foot, the percentage of gross revenue, the fuel flowage fee, the insurance, everything is spelled out in the lease agreement. And that's the path that the board chose to go down back in the 80s. Your predecessors, and that's what we followed since.
Everything in our lease, since then.
Yeah, everything in our lease agreements meets the standards with the grant assurances. We don't have economic non-discrimination, so if somebody wants to come on to the airport and fuel aircraft, we can't deny them the right to do that. But the method with which that they do fuel the aircraft or set up their fuel farm, the board approved some fuel regulations some years ago. Those are then provided to the hangar owners or businesses on the field. The board also approved back in the late 90s, I think it was 1998, guidelines for construction. So everybody follows the same construction, earth tones. That is all spelled out. So anytime there's a change in, say, board policy or board direction, those leases are amended, either the private aircraft owners, which we recently did because of Part 26, the disadvantaged business enterprise and discrimination, all of that has been done. So that's just a way of doing it. And other airports had looked to us as far as, okay, you don't have minimum standards per se, but they're followed through in the lease agreements with each operator. That's how we do it. So everybody is treated the same on the airfield.
And I would just add, when I came on board, just to make sure I'm 100% familiar with what's going on here, is I went and addressed every ground lease, every lease agreement to ensure that uniformity. So everyone is the same.
So this board hasn't put up any obstacles, and I think the evidence of that is the development that's taken place on this airfield since the late 80s.
So if we just applied those two minimum standards for the airport, then that's not a huge change.
Basically, you would put out a generic lease agreement, which contains the minimum standards that we follow. I don't think the board wants to get into a position like some airports are doing, is dictating. So if an FBO comes here and says, hey, you got to have a 5,000 square foot lobby and waiting area, you have to have a 15,000 square foot hangar. If that's challenged, I don't know if Tom Schauer's still on, he was the compliance officer for the FAA for years. If that's challenged, they file a Part 16 complaint with the FAA. And at the end of the day, they win because the FAA goes through and determines what's reasonable and what's unreasonable in your standards. It keeps attorneys busy at the airport when they're constantly fighting that. Those that are on the airfield providing aeronautical services want really, really strict and tight minimum standards to prevent competition. Those that want to do business on the airfield want those standards. Not as restrictive. And you're always in this balance of, is it reasonable or unreasonable? And ultimately, at the end of the day, the FAA will determine that for you if there's a Part 16 complaint filed. That's why our process that the board, your predecessors did back in the 80s, is going to manage those standards through the lease agreement has really worked well for us. And I'm aware there's everybody's got some minimum standards.
Yeah, well, and again, it's kind of like, from my perspective, I look at it comparable to land, right? And it's like land is zoned different things, there's different uses, so people know that I can build a retail center there, a house there, or something like that. It just seems to be more transparent, and so it seems like everything is really just goes through you and our staff or this board, and I mean, I would think that would be a deterrent. I mean, if someone wants an aviation shop or someone wants a paint shop or some of those things, and maybe we don't want those side businesses here, but I think one of the reasons I'm on the board is business aviation that's out there that needs these services. They're, you know, so anyway, I didn't really have a motion or anything like that, but I thought it was interesting that she was surprised that we didn't have a minimum standards.
It's different. I can say it's minimum standards through the lease and operating agreement. And you mentioned a paint shop, and we'd like to have a paint shop here. Jim probably remembers this. One of the businesses from Castleton wanted to move to Fargo to open a paint shop, buy an existing building, and then retrofit it. By the time they got through building code and inspections and everything else, the fire department, what they had to do to it, they stayed in Castleton.
Well, this is some of my thing is if there's some of those services that could be utilized here and they would bring business from the region into Fargo, you know, can we remove some of those barriers so some small business doesn't have to figure it all out on their own? You know, if they had, well, I mean, if they said, here's what you need to do.
Barriers are out of our control. They're with the fire department and or inspections to meet a paint shop or something like that.
Sean, I get that.
Yep.
My point is, if we had, and again, just using that as an example, if we had the fire and everyone else say, here's the minimum standards that we need for someone to do a paint job on the airport grounds, that could be given to them. They could take to their architect or their developer and figure it out, rather than spending a bunch of time and getting to that point, spending all their own money and saying the hell with it. But anyway, again, I just thought it was interesting, and I was concerned first of all about our liability. If someone would challenge us, where are we at? And second of all would be, are we being good stewards? Or are we removing barriers or adding barriers to services on the airport?
Jim, you've worked at a lot of airports around the country. How's it here?
I was gonna ask, Mr. Sweeney here,
So yes, I've been involved on the airport for close to 30 years and had leaseholds on 4 other airports. And the Fargo airport has always been the easiest to deal because you're dealing with the staff, with the board, always open and accessible to make decisions. But, and all this, I mean, I hear what Sean is saying. The standards are in there. They're in all the federal documents. I've had this discussion for 20 years about minimum standards. I don't know if a new document would change anything.
Yeah, and I appreciate your input, obviously. Okay.
Well, comparing it to zoning or different things like that, the only thing I would see with minimum standards is the ability to do that first review is to say, yeah, I want to do this. And maybe it goes beyond airfield, is in the terminal or whatever, is to be able to go and say, well, okay, that's not allowed. So if I want to do this, now I know what I'm up against. And that type of thing, I think, can help us. Yeah. The only thing I would say, and Stacy, I know you've reviewed all the leases, but if somebody wants to find a problem, all they have to do is find one small difference in one lease and say, hey, I wasn't treated the same. That's pretty easy to do.
I felt it was pretty thorough, but I mean, like when we had the new standards that came out for the anti-discrimination, we amended every single lease.
Yep. No, I'm not faulting it, but it's just wide open to if you want to go on and do that. So I think it's more of a convenience, sort of the first review point of saying what can and can't you do, and before they start to spend a lot of money in design, do different things and get to a certain place, or decide if they want to come in and say, okay,
We have 3 right now that are going through that process. I tell them, make your napkin sketch of what ground you're looking at building your hangar on. And go through that process with inspections and others before you spend a lot of time with a designer or whatever. So they're doing that exact same thing. That's what's in our building guidelines that we've been working with as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Tom Schauer. Just one real quick thing I'd like to point out too is to go back to Mr. Berg's comment. A lot of times the details in your minimum standards are not going to get into the exact fire codes and all the different things. So at any given time somebody comes in, and even if you have minimum standards, they would be reviewing those high likelihood that if you had minimum standards, you would say it needs to be done in accordance with current or existing fire codes, current and existing building codes, things like that. So a lot of those items are updated on a regular basis. So somebody reading your minimum standards is going to have only a big picture of what's allowed on the airport. Generally, every airport development that's looking at coming on an airport realizes that airports cannot legally restrict aeronautical activities. So I don't know if anybody's ever come on and asked Sean and said, can I do this? Usually probably more the fact of where am I allowed to put such and such, whether it's a aerial applicator, whether it's a painter, whether it's fuel services and things like that. So there's benefits having been on the FAA side, having minimum standards. The biggest item is helping an airport stay consistent with the grant assurances. That's why it's not a mandate. You can do it through multiple vehicles. You're doing it through your lease agreements. That's also acceptable. Again, it sounds like since you haven't had a lot of complaints, you're doing a good job in making sure that you're in conformance with the FAA's grant assurances, which are also updated on a regular basis. That's all I had.
Okay. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Sean?
Tom, I just want to express our sympathy to you and your family for the passing of your mother. So thanks for being on today.
Thank you.
If not, we'll move on. Receive update from Governance Subcommittee. Mr. Berg.
So if I could maybe go first, Mr. Berg. So at our last meeting, I gave the opinion that even a subcommittee of 2 constitutes quorum, and therefore we have to follow the open meetings rules. So we give notice, it's open to the public, and meeting minutes are taken. John had suggested, well, does that apply to all meetings of a subcommittee of 2? Or is it only like a final decision-making process? So I went back and I reviewed more Attorney General opinions, and I hold the opinion that unless there's a confidentiality issue, there's an exemption issue, that even when you're having a discussion group or an information gathering group of 2, that open meetings applies. And you need to do the notice, the public gets to come, and we take meeting minutes.
Can you write that up and give it to me?
Mm-hmm.
Give me a letter.
I have it.
What's that?
I have it. I just thought I'd start with discussion points to see if you wanted me to even go another step further, but I do have this memo for the board. I just wanted to make a presentation today, and then.
Yep. No, I would like that. It's quite frankly, it's all the more reason we need to get into governance, because that ties the hands of anyone doing anything to do any background research. So, but
John, perhaps you could relate to some of the city subcommittees, and although they're never denying admittance to a meeting by anybody, they don't follow the strict guidelines of notice and minutes being taken when there's less than a quorum.
I'll qualify that. Yeah. You know, we've had some patterns over time where things were happening and we didn't look into whether or not they're according to Hoyle. We've recently looked into if you have a board appointing members to a committee, that automatically renders it open to state law, under state law, as I understand it. So, for example, our finance committee went for years and years and years without noticing the public and without taking minutes until that issue surfaced, and we realized we're not compliant with the statute.
I read that opinion.
So we're evolving in that, but my general sense is similar to yours. Stacy, that if it's an appointment by a board to a committee, that renders it open.
Do you do recordings if you don't take minutes?
I don't know about that for sure. I think if it's an open meeting, they're probably documenting it.
I could
Or should be.
chat with Nancy Moore, but I just
Who's
err on.
Nancy Moore?
She's
Morris, our
the city
attorney.
attorney.
Okay, I might ask, who's on this governance subcommittee?
Well, it's just Dean and I.
Okay.
We made that motion 2 weeks ago. So, I mean, I would say, let me, why don't you send me that email and your opinion? And why don't I get a hold of the Attorney General and have him give us his perspective on it? And I mean, that's what we're trying to guess anyhow, right?
Well, and so the materials I have in here, I did take from North Dakota Attorney General opinions.
I'm
I would
saying,
never
I'm
assert
saying, let's have
perfection.
him give an opinion on this committee. This board.
Okay, certainly.
Are you saying that they have to notify the press and all that stuff?
Do you
For an open meeting?
post when you do for open meetings, Joan?
We post it on our website, but then I've got a list of people who get our agendas, who have requested to get them, and all the media people are on there.
I mean, I don't have any problem.
We do
with
that in the county if 3 or more commissioners are on there.
That's
If
quorum.
it's just 2, what?
It's a quorum.
Yeah. 3 or more.
Right.
So
And
the,
if it's just 2 people, we don't, I mean,
so the
2
way,
of us get together before our meetings all the time.
so this would be something a little more formal where we have a governance committee that is delegated power to by this
Okay.
board.
Oh, I see
And
what
then you
you're
have a
talking about. Yeah.
subcommittee of 2. If they meet, that's a quorum.
Yeah.
And then subject to open record.
That's true.
Stacy, let's have the Attorney General, but as long as there's, I thought the demarcation is decision-making ability. And if we have 2 people working on the governance committee, making recommendations to the board, reporting to the board,
The decision would be by the board.
the
We're not-
decision would
any
be by the
decision
board.
doesn't
There's
happen.
no decision made by the subcommittee. That we can, but again, my attitude on open meetings is every meeting can be open. Anybody that wants to come in can come in. It's no big deal.
And I guess I would err on the side of that unless you fall under whatever the confidentiality may be or the exemption. So we're having an attorney-client discussion, you know, we're in mediation with opposing parties, those kind of things where it's very obvious. And then we follow, you know, the executive committee procedures for going into closed sessions. But I
And
would so-
I think just from a functioning standpoint, being able to have Paul and I work on some aspect. We aren't making any decisions, we aren't making any commitments, bringing them back for recommendation to the board. That
Well, Mr. Chair, just
Go
like,
ahead.
just like you said, the 3 was what I always had thought it was, that 3 couldn't be in the same place at the same time, because we've had parking committee, like 2 board members attending the parking meetings or the finance meetings, or like, and we always were like, okay, only 2 people can do that, or so like Jim, you and I are both on the pre-con meeting,
Yeah.
and you don't have to
But I
say
think,
that's all an open meeting.
I think she makes a good point as the board, we as the board appointed those 2 to a subcommittee. So then I think they are relegated to an open meeting.
Mr. Chairman, it doesn't matter what any of us think.
Yeah. The
So
Attorney
I guess what
General.
I'm saying is let's quit the discussion. Stacy, send me the email. I think we should have the Attorney General give us an opinion and what the parameters are. So going forward, we're following whatever those parameters are.
Yeah.
that was all the party of
That way we
Yeah,
stay
I don't
under the
care
fire
how we
forum's
do it, but
opinion.
it's yeah. I mean, from a fundamental standpoint, what we learned in Sioux Falls is this is part of what they do to gather more information. So you're not spending a long time in each meeting. So
Okay.
and I guess to continue that, I mean, I really don't. So Dean and I met with 2 people from NDSU, Jody and Andrea, and they do governance for a lot of different organizations. We met with Kim Kenville, who really is, probably a veteran expert, teaches airport management at UND, And then we met with Jeff Schatz, who, you know, that's kind of his business is board governance and what he's doing. So we don't really have anything to report, just the fact that we met. And I don't know, Dean had anything to add, but they all had different perspectives that I thought were insightful.
Okay, very good. Well, then you're going to get that from our attorney and then get the Attorney General's opinion. All right, very good. Number 11, discuss QR code link survey. Paula.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm glad this is on the agenda so that we can just briefly discuss this. Also, since our last meeting, we got the parking survey. And so the parking survey is kind of buried in the website. You don't get to it until you go to the parking site. And then we've got the new QR code survey that's down in the gate area. And I know that the parking survey is a little deceptive because it also includes baggage, food and beverage, kind of the overall experience. But it was very informational, I think, as we were implementing the new exit plaza, for people to give us their feedback and say, oh, the signage isn't clear or something's not working. And so I think that it's helpful for us as a board or as staff to have that parking survey feedback on a regular basis, especially as we're transitioning during this construction phase, to make sure that we're meeting our customers' needs. And so I think that I'm happy to just briefly say, I'm really glad that we're doing that QR code and that that's a new addition. But how can we make sure that people have more access to that and that the board and staff also, I don't know who's running that new QR code survey. And then the parking survey is kind of taking the brunt of all the other feedback because, maybe it's not up to S&P to, sort through food and beverage comments or terminal comments. So how can we clarify or streamline this survey process so that we get feedback from our customers, especially during this construction phase when people may be encountering difficulties that we could address on a timely basis if we get the surveys back in a timely manner. And then maybe the QR code one that's in the lobby, I was wondering who's supporting that, and maybe that needs to be more comprehensive, and then the parking survey can just focus on parking. And then the results of the parking survey, also my comment on that Greg just emailed to us, was that it only included people that were, or passengers that were pre-booking. And because parking is so important to our revenue, don't we want to hear from all of the people that are parking, not just the people that have that are pre-booking? And then number two, and Greg's not on today, but the survey that he sent didn't have any of the comment portion. It was number 8 on the survey, and one of the last surveys had like 50 comments from people, like just giving, instead of checking a box, the actual part where they made a comment. So I just had a lot of questions about the QR or the surveys that we're doing, how we can be more efficient, how we can be more responsive to the people who take the time to fill out the survey and make it more accessible.
Good idea.
The purpose of the QR code is just for people in the building to get a hold of their partners. Something wrong, TSA, airline, whatever. They wouldn't go to a survey and fill something out. Just you scan it, you put your message in, and send it in.
Okay.
Quick.
Do we have a formalized system as to who deals with those or who responds? Because the problem is if you take information and nothing happens with it.
If there's a response required, some people just vent their frustrations, sorry it happened or whatever. But if it's a TSA issue, they forward on to the TSA. If it's an airline employee issue, it goes to that. Parking issue, it goes on that way. So, everyone is followed up if needed.
I think, Mr. Chairman, too, over the next 24 months, we're going to have a mess on parking. So I think if we're trying valet and trying some of these different things, I think it's really important to get the user's feedback on that. So, if there's something that's not working, it can be changed quickly, or if there's something that would work better, that we can change it quickly, because we just, so, I mean, again, I think, Paul, you complimented Greg, and I thought that was great. It's great having these surveys. Without knowing what people are thinking, it's hard for us to make decisions. So I'd encourage that, and especially as we go into this next couple months or couple years.
The one, and it's not very often, but you do see where somebody tried to call and they couldn't get through, and Greg keeps telling us that doesn't. They've got people answering phones. I just
out there.
Yeah, I don't know what happens there, but it would be nice to make sure that there's even sorry about your bad experience.
Well, parking is our biggest revenue generator. And so I think if we can be responsive to any concerns that our customers are having along the way. And I know one of the emails I think we all got that was a suggestion to Greg was to have them text you before your reservation, and that was happening at the Minneapolis airport. And then if that was happening, then it would be just a reminder again, like, hey, arrive early, construction is going on, just to continue. I just, communication is always so important. So how do we get better at that with making sure that our passengers and our customers, that we're responsive to their concerns or positive or negative comments. And I do think that the parking survey that is accessed online on our website, if you go to the parking thing, it's also really comprehensive for the baggage and the food and beverage, and maybe S&P doesn't want to have to sort through all those comments. Maybe we have another opportunity on our website for a different type of survey.
How do we do that?
I'm looking for recommendations.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I don't think parking should have to deal with food and beverage and all that other stuff, but it's over my head.
The way it is now is QR code would probably take that up.
Maybe make the QR code survey a little more comprehensive.
Well, but the QR code's not a survey.
Okay.
It's
just
a comment.
a comment.
It's
Okay.
That's where I'm saying it.
Yeah.
It likely.
If you want to get a hold of us, if you have an issue, or well, some of you came back as compliments. Gate agent did a
Absolutely.
great job. Yeah. I mean, it's a way for the public to communicate. Yep.
I love that because it's nice for staff to know too when they're doing a good job.
Airport.com he checks that every day. So,
Okay.
So that's another way of getting comments, lost and found or whatever it is.
Jody, maybe I'll just ask you real quick. Can Flint do, can we have a survey on our website similar to what the parking survey is?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you could do like a simple net promoter score survey that would be easy. Just to ask a few questions to pulse the experience.
If it went to airport staff instead of having to be sorted through S&P, then we would maybe get the feedback on a more timely.
Yeah, the data
manner.
is easy to sort. You just gotta have a repository where it can be sorted simply.
So maybe that could be something that we could look into.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just a couple more comments whenever you're ready.
Okay.
All right, so May was a record month, 8% over the last record May. Frontier set an all-time record in the month of May for number of passengers. A couple of weeks ago, airport directors from Grand Forks, Dickinson, and myself, along with the Aeronautics Commission staff, met with the governor's budget staff and Office of Management and Budget to present the $120 million request for the governor's budget. $60 million for Fargo, $30 million for Grand Forks, $30 million for Dickinson. That same briefing was given to the Aeronautics Commission board last Thursday in Bismarck as they went through and allocated the grants, the $3 million grant, plus getting them up to speed on the requests that will be coming forth in the Aeronautics Commission budget to the governor. Thursday, through the Airport Association of North Dakota, the same group is going to be meeting with Senator Hogue and Senator Beckendahl in Grand Forks to go through this $120 million request. And we'll hopefully that'll catch on. But they've been briefed on it. So far, we haven't heard any negative comments that will catch on and get in the governor's budget. That's what we're hoping. We're continuing to work on that. Grand Forks is going to have some of their area legislators in on Thursday as well in this meeting. We're working on setting up something in the Fargo area, and that Dickens is doing the same up there to bring legislators. We had 14 legislators coming to the groundbreaking. Now that it's on July 1st, I think we're down to 3. So a bunch of them dropped out. They couldn't make it on 4th of July week, but we'll keep working on it.
Rick?
Well, one, I really appreciate those boarding numbers, Sean. I think that's really good. It just kind of comes so much randomly, and I'd like it going forward if the staff could just show us Fargo. You know, I know you forward a lot of that stuff, but just show us Fargo and what we're doing, because I think that helps us track that growth. The other thing, Mr. Chairman, is I'd like to, one of the, last meeting we had 3 motions, and then, my concern with our agenda is a lot of these things never really get followed up again. So I'd like to, for our next agenda, I'd like to have one agenda item, kind of old business, and on there I'd like to have the update on hotel for the airport, an update on that advertising, art, and sponsorship coordination by Mead and Hunt, and then also an update on the economic impact study for Hector.
So you want an item of old business?
Well, yeah, or however you want to do it, but I don't want to just forget those things that we had motions on. So if you want to list them separately or old business, but I think going forward too, if there's things that want updates on, we should make sure that we're kind of closing those loops. I know last meeting we were talking about, the people who are doing the HR, and they had some things they're going to do in November, and we never heard back from them. So I think just keeping those loops closed would be helpful for our board.
Okay. Anything else?
Mr. Chair, I've got one quick question. So at the last meeting, when I look at the minutes, we had approved the gate number 4 jetway payments of $129,000 and then another $5,500. And then on the North Dakota Aeronautics, item number 14 says replace passenger boarding bridge number 4 with a request of 1.39 million. So are we planning on a new boarding bridge or
request from the state their share of the cost of the bridge
that we already purchased? All right, there was just double on the number 4
Our
jetway.
grant requests to the state generally come after the projects are completed, so we have accurate numbers.
Okay.
What happens often when airports put in an estimated cost to the state, they end up over granting, and then all that money being returned. So to make it more efficient between the airport and the state, we always want final bid cost and final project cost.
So that was the one that we had purchased before, and we were just finishing paying it off, and then here's okay. All right. Thanks for clarification.
If there's nothing else, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Motion has been made and second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign.